this magnet, can you guys see it? It says, think. It's not illegal yet. Not illegal yet. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. Today I wanted to have a little chat about a topic that's been on my mind for the past, I would say at least 6 months, if not longer. So today I want to talk about banned books, and I guess by extension censorship in general, and the idea of freedom of expression. I think the most poignant introduction I could give would be to remember the shooting on a quiet morning in Paris in January 2015 of satirical cartoonists in the offices of Charlie Hebdo. After that incident, which really shocked the world, there was a cartoon that circulated in memory along with the phrase "Je suis Charlie," suggesting that we are all Charlie, that we all deserve to be able to be free to express our ideas. But it was an image of a pencil. And I think the connection surely is not lost between the pencil and the written word and the concept of banning books. So that's the topic of the video today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of censorship and book banning. I'm going to talk also about the reasons why books are typically banned, or the efforts of oppressing voices or controlling information and the dissemination of ideas. Who wants to control them and why? And I'll talk about some famous books that have been banned in the past. And then I'll talk a little bit about why banning books is a problem and why maybe there are some moments where it could be justified, although I'm not one to censor or ban books. For those of you who have watched my channel for some time, you probably would have guessed that about me. And then I'm going to talk about some books that have been banned in the last 2 or 3 years and the statistics on the rates at which the banning of books in education curriculums, libraries have been increasing and why that's such a concern, and talk a little bit about some of the books that have been most banned in current times. I'm going to ask everybody, so I'm not leaving any surprises, to pick up a banned book and read it in 2024. Censorship and banning books involves restricting and controlling written materials of any kind, just by definition. Banned books specifically refers to literary works that have been officially forbidden or have been removed from the public's access. They could also be books or pieces of literature that have been restricted by the government, an authority, or even an individual or an organization. You can't really have a discussion about banned books without also talking about censorship. The reason why it's important to have conversations about banned books and censorship in general is that the principles of democracy and a democratic society are founded on the concept of intellectual freedom. So the freedom to think for yourself, to question ideas, and the freedom of expression. So the freedom to share your experience, your opinions, your point of view. In the US, this is the First Amendment right to free speech. Intellectual freedom in particular, because I work in an academic setting or in a college setting and I'm an educator, academic freedom is considered to be really important for the growth of individuals and arguably progress in society. If we want society to advance, we really need to have open and free dialogues about ideas, and literature is often a starting point for those discussions, at least in education. So what follows from that is that we need to have open and free access to the books that contain those ideas. They have to be made available so that we can discuss them, and people have to be able to read them and think about ideas even if they have a difference of opinion about those ideas. So that would be an environment of intellectual freedom and freedom of expression. And the other reason why it's important is that then people can make informed decisions, and it fosters an environment for progress and even for innovation when we're able to do that. So that's why it's such an important topic. So let's get into the historical context of the banning of books. Basically, from the time there was a written word, books have been banned or suppressed for a variety of different reasons. They've been censored, they have been burned, they have been forbidden by the powers that be. As far back as in ancient Roman times, the government had actually the power to ban and burn books that were deemed to be offensive or heretical. And then after that, during the Industrial Revolution, with the invention of the printing press and the resulting increase in disseminating literature, books, pamphlets, what have you, widely, and being able to print works, there was immediately a response to control the distribution of any of these printed materials, in particular by the Catholic Church. The Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the Index of Prohibited Books, in the 16th century, specifically to identify books and works that were deemed to be contrary to the church's beliefs and therefore to be condemned. Catholics who were found to read these materials would have been excommunicated, so they would have been punished. And also, we've seen governments throughout history use propaganda for political reasons and also ban books for their political goals and objectives. In particular, in Nazi Germany and in the Soviet Union, books were censored if they were considered to be contrary to the ideologies that advanced fascism, or contrary to the political ideologies of the time. The culture of book banning is not new. There are a lot of famous books that have been banned. The first is Ulysses by James Joyce, written in 1922. I haven't read Ulysses. It was banned in the United States and the UK for obscenity. It actually faced legal challenges and censorship for its content, but also for its experimental narrative style. That's not disturbing at all. Lolita as well, infamously a very controversial novel written by Vladimir Nabokov in 1955. I haven't read Lolita myself either. Maybe I'm a little bit guilty of self-censorship there. It's a controversial novel because it deals with a middle-aged man's, I think most people know this, deals with a middle-aged man's infatuation with a teenage girl. It was banned because of its explicit content and its themes of pedophilia. The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie, written in 1988. This novel sparked outrage in the Muslim world due to the perceived blasphemy within it. And it led to a fatwa, which is a religious edict that was issued against the author by Iran's leadership, the Ayatollah Khomeini. And in fact, that was acted upon against Salman Rushdie very recently. He was stabbed, and I believe he lost an eye. So there are many, as you can see, there are many different motives for banning books and for censorship in general. Let's get into those, okay? The motives behind banning books can really vary, as we've just seen, but they typically stem from the desire to control or limit the spread of certain ideas and or information. For example, religious blasphemy, Satanic verses, or ideas that might incite some kind of rebellion. So that could be against political ideologies. But on the other hand, we also have the banning of books that are suggestive of hate speech or racism. So we kind of have this idea of taking censorship and the banning of books and trying to use it for the public good as well, that's tied up in the ideas around censorship, or that are used as a reason for canceling a book, for example, which is a form of censorship. So that's like a public outrage about a book. But I would argue that that's completely different than an authority banning a book for political reasons or ideological reasons or religious beliefs. So it's a tricky subject, no doubt about it. That's why I wanted to make a video about it. Books are most often banned for the following reasons: ideological reasons, political reasons, religious beliefs, social and cultural reasons, explicit content, moral and ethical concerns, age restrictions. Okay, so we do have some regulation around what should be available to children, and a lot of censorship revolves, and banning of books revolves around what society feels children should be exposed to. And then also this idea of challenging societal norms. So those are the main reasons why books are often banned, or requests are made for books to be removed from curriculums, or people object to certain books. Perfect example of a book or a piece of writing that was banned was the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Frederich Engels. The Communist Manifesto was banned, and communist ideology was banned, essentially, in many countries during the Cold War era due to the association that it had with Marxist ideology and communism. That's a perfect example of ideological reasons for banning a book. Animal Farm by George Orwell was also famously banned in several countries. That was because of its criticism of totalitarianism and authoritarian regimes. And because Animal Farm serves as political satire, it was banned for those reasons. For religious reasons, I already talked a little bit about the Catholic Church, and the banning of Satanic verses certainly had to do with religious beliefs. Another interesting one is the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, a super popular book, but it was banned in certain countries because it faced opposition from religious organizations for its famously alternative interpretation of Christian history. And so we see that a lot with books that are about Christianity or characters in the stories of the Bible. Books that are banned for social and cultural reasons, I already talked about Lolita. Books that have explicit use of drugs, for example. Junky, famously, by William S. Burroughs. This is a semi-autobiographical novel. It faced bans and challenges for its very, very frank and open exploration of drug addiction. The argument was that it was glorifying drug use. Trainspotting by Irvine Welsh. This novel, which was later famously turned into a movie, had been criticized because of the portrayal of heroin addiction and drug culture and the normalization of drug use. You can also have books that are banned for controversial themes. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper was famously banned in some schools in the United States because of its use of racial slurs and its themes of racism and social injustice. Meanwhile, for explicit content, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James was banned or challenged in many libraries and school districts for its explicit sexual content. On moral and ethical grounds, Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This novel faced bans and challenges because of its exploration of decadence and hedonism and moral corruption. American Psycho by Bret, Easton, Ellis as well. The objections to American Psycho are to do with the graphic depictions of violence, the sadism, the immoral behavior. People really believe that it does serve to glorify and promote unethical and really harmful behavior. Books that have been censored for children include A Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein. Some of Shel Silverstein's poetry, I love Shel Silverstein's poetry, but some of Shel Silverstein's poetry books were challenged for irreverent and sometimes even dark humor. 13 Reasons Why, which became a Netflix television show by Jay Asher, that young adult novel was challenged for its graphic portrayal of suicide and the controversial themes surrounding the topic. The argument there being that these books need to be censored in order to protect children whose young minds may not know how to reconcile these ideas without the support of others. So removing them from libraries, removing them from circulation. So The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This book, discussions of mental health, drug use, sexual content, and some believe that that wasn't appropriate for younger readers. In terms of societal norms, 1984 by George Orwell, banned by some authoritarian governments because it criticizes the concept of surveillance and totalitarianism. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley was banned for its themes of a dystopian society, challenging conventional norms. Lots of examples of banned books over the years. So what's the impact of this phenomenon of censorship on society? The first is suppression of ideas and free speech, which I'm going to talk about. But there's also the phenomenon of this idea that once a book is banned, its appeal is strengthened. Art Spiegelman famously applauded the banning of Maus because he felt that more people would read his book. Censorship at its core is a form of power. It's a way for an individual or a group of individuals who have power in society to exert that power over other individuals by curtailing their freedoms. So the act of banning books is kind of a tool for power and control, and has been used as a tool for power and control and to shape public opinion on different ideas within our society. So when governments or institutions are banning books, they're usually seeking to suppress dissent, right? To stop people from speaking out against their policies. They want to control information. They want to control the story, the narrative, so that they can maintain whatever power they hold and to be able to maintain existing power structures as well. So that means, in its essence, limiting exposure to alternative ideas, experimental ideas, alternative ways of thinking about the world, and alternative perspectives on society. That means that when a book is banned, it's by the government or by those in power, it often means that we're losing basic means for progress in our societies, because we're losing alternative ideas that could lead us into more progressive ways of existing, living, being, and thinking. So that's the big issue, right? This is the problem with the suppression of free speech and the problem with banning books and the problem of the idea of trying to control intellectual thought, or trying to control your thinking. Banning books limits certain ideas, information, and that can really prevent people in society from being exposed to diverse, different points of view, diverse, different experiences. It makes it harder for us as a society, the public, to really engage in critical thinking. And critical thinking is essential to well-functioning society. So the freedom of expression and the freedom of opinion, and if that opinion is critical or dissenting or questioning, the freedom to have that as a fundamental part of a democratic society is what is at stake when we censor and when we ban books. That can be very, very bad for a vibrant, active democracy. Ultimately, banning books or censoring books, regardless of the motive, is really a direct violation of the right of that author to express their ideas. So it's an attack on the freedom of expression, which is considered to be a fundamental human right. So it just denies those authors the opportunity to express their thoughts, their ideas, their creativity freely, and it also restricts and denies readers to experience those other ideas and have access to different points of view and different information. That means like those two things put together, restricting an author's expression and restricting readers from being able to be exposed to different points of views and different ideas, really is kind of an attack on open, free exchange of ideas and open and critical discourse. So that leads me to the impact that this has on education. So as an educator, this is a topic that's very close to my heart, because when we have books that are banned in educational settings, or when we have theory that is banned in educational settings, what we are actually doing is limiting the exposure that students have to different ideas and different perspectives, really restricting, narrowing their worldview, or even controlling their worldview. For me, as an educator, one of the main and most important parts of my job is to encourage and to create curriculum materials that encourage open discourse and critical thinking. Banning and censorship is not something that fits with the goals of education, at least not from my perspective. So in short, what banning books and censorship does is that it limits individuals from being able to express themselves, and it limits our society from being able to have open and meaningful conversations about ideas, whether we agree with those ideas or not. An interesting side effect of banning books is that it can strengthen the appeal of those banned books. So there's some reasons why banned books become more interesting or more exciting because they're banned. It may be that sometimes the book can represent an aspect of counterculture, and that's the reason why it's banned. And so that can make it even more popular within the culture. There's also the idea that when something is forbidden, it's more appealing. So out of curiosity or out of a sense of rebellion, or out of a sense of rebelliousness, people will seek out banned material. Sometimes the banning of books can garner a lot of media attention to those books and those stories, and that can actually end up putting a highlight on the book that's being banned and make it more popular, or even make it recognized in a situation where it maybe was not recognized before. Certainly, there is an attitude that if something contains within it ideas that are causing a kind of reaction where the impulse is to control those ideas or to control the individuals writing about those experiences, then there is an instinct to actually want to shine a light on those ideas and those experiences, particularly for people who want to have an open discourse in society about ideas. Many educators will gravitate towards banned books and will, in fact, praise banned books for addressing issues that may be issues that have consequences associated with them in the setting of the society in which they are presented. In terms of curriculum challenges and in educational settings, censorship really can disrupt the student's experience of learning. I do think that in many educational institutions, there are many teachers that will fight this type of censorship and will object to the banning of materials for that reason alone. Those are some reasons why banned books become even more popular. So in some ways, the act of banning books is counterproductive. And then finally, there is a role that banned books play in sparking social change. And I think that that's also really important to note. So one of the ways in which this happens is that controversial topics can, if it's a controversial topic that's a sensitive topic or a sensitive subject that's been part of the content of a banned book, then the book is banned or it's censored or it's challenged, then that can really spark a conversation in society. It will draw attention to those ideas that are raised within the banned material, whether somebody reads the book or not. For example, Lolita and pedophilia, or 13 Reasons Why and suicide, or 50 Shades of Grey and sexually explicit content, or To Kill a Mockingbird and racial injustice. All of these topics then become topics of conversation where at one point maybe they would not have been topics of conversation. And it doesn't even mean that people have read the book to have that censored topic of the book become part of a wider conversation within society. It can ignite this public discourse when books are challenged. Banned books also can become very symbolic. They can become symbols of resistance against censorship, particularly when people rally around those authors or rally around those ideas, and that they can then become for themselves the focal point of fighting for freedom of expression. So we've seen that, for example, in many of the books that have been banned in relation to race, the LGBTQ plus community. And in a way, banning books kind of brings this increased awareness about certain ideas in society or certain themes that are being presented in literature that are calling into question ideas. It can really prompt people just to individually seek out other information and educate themselves on a particular issue that was raised by the banning of books. That being said, there has been a recent surge in book bans in the US, in particular in school districts and libraries. The current wave of books that are being banned are usually being banned in response to complaints about violent or sexual content. It's disturbing because most of the books that are being banned deal with LGBTQ plus topics or topics about race or topics about fighting back against the authoritarian structures of things like policing, for example. According to, and these are statistics for the US, so I'm just going to include those here. The American Library Association reports that in 2022, a record 1,269 demands were made to restrict or ban books. I'm going to include the source for this. This is from the LA Times. I can include the source for this below. 1,269 requests were made to restrict or ban books and other materials in schools and libraries. And that's up from 156 demands in 2020. That's a lot. That article includes the 15 books PEN America says were most frequently banned from July 2021 through the first part of 2022-2023 school year. And I'm just going to name the first 5. The first one is Genderqueer, a Memoir by Maya Kobabe. This is a 2019 autobiography. It's a graphic novel, and it's been praised because it's an honest, open discussion of what it's like to be a non-binary person. The second book I have actually read that's on this list, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is also an autobiography memoir, Manifesto, that is about a young Black queer person who really didn't see themselves represented in society. At least that's what he said about his own book. It was written in 2020. It's a set of essays about coming of age as a Black queer person. The third most banned book is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which I have not read but intend to read in 2024. So this is going to be the book that I read for my challenge. It was first published in 1970, and it's about a Black girl growing up during the Great Depression. It's supposed to be an exploration, a contemplation about the concept of Western beauty as being white-centric, and it's got some depiction of child abuse and sexual violence, which is the reason why it's been challenged. The fourth book on the list is Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope. This is about an explosion in 1937 that killed nearly 300 students and teachers at a Texas school. And that provides the context for this novel, which is a YA novel, which is a love story about a black boy and a Mexican girl. And it was published in 2015. It's supposed to be challenged for sexual depictions in the story. The fifth one on this list is Flamer by Mike Curato. This is an award-winning 2020 novel that explores a teenage boy's struggle to understand and accept his sexuality while at summer camp in the 1990s. So I'll include the link to the article down below, and I'll include a link to other lists of banned books. And I'm going to leave you all, as I've mentioned a couple times in this video, I'm going to leave you all with a challenge for 2024 as we come into the planning phase on BookTube for 2024. I challenge all of my viewers, all of my fellow booktubers. I challenge you. I mean, I'm not turning this into like a readathon or anything like that, but I challenge you. Maybe that's a good idea. But I challenge you to choose at least one banned book to read in 2024. There's so many of them, you won't have any problem. You could reread a book that you read in high school that was famously banned, or you can read something from the list of banned books from the past 2 years. Thank you everyone for watching. This is the first time I've done a video that is on a topic that I wanted to explore, and I'm thinking about doing more of these. So let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed it, if you want to see more content like this, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye. Today, and Granola, he's going to be my assistant. We shall see. The Catholic Church actually established the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the index of, that's Latin. Let me practice my Latin, shall I? Frederich Engels. By the way, I love Shel Silverstein's book. I can't speak today. So I think we need a hashtag, right? So I can't be the only one. I think there's like banned book months, there's banned book everything. Why? I don't want to really claim it. I'm sure there's another challenge that I'm unaware of. I won't even bother. I feel like it's probably already been done. Bye!